Raynor Wynne is not the first author to have been accused by the press of misrepresenting themselves in an autobiography, upsetting readers for whom a book had been of an almost spiritual significance. Back in 1956, details of another best-selling memoir, The Third Eye by T. Lobsang Rampa, were called into question. Again, the press smelt a rat. Was T. Lobsang Rampa really a Tibetan Lama who had in his book revealed great spiritual secrets? Or was he in fact Cyril Henry Hoskin, the unemployed son of a plumber from Plympton, near Portsmouth in Devon? This more prosaic explanation would certainly have accounted for his pronounced Devonian accent. Like Raynor Wynne, Rampa didn't really want to discuss matters with the press, whereas Wynne's replies to accusations have come through her solicitors. Cyril Hoskin reacted to the press expose by doubling down on his imposture. As a policeman might say, his explanation may have harmed his defence because he had failed to mention something which he later relied on in the court of a public opinion. His eventual explanation, and it took a while to come up with and to fine-tune, was that Cyril Hoskin, the humble son of a plumber, one-time surgical truss fitter, and at that time unemployed, had had his physical body taken over by a Tibetan Lama. And then for the next 25 years, until his death in 1981, and over another 17 books, he never once came out of character. He was always T. Lobsang Rampa. Now, authors of autobiographies have always been tempted to manipulate the truth in order to present a more compelling story, but few were as blatant as Lobsang Rampa. He was once a household name. His readers included Winston Churchill here in the UK, Henry Miller in the US, even people like Bob Marley read him. His claims about the third eye became a part of the popular culture. The only problem was that he seemed to be writing fiction rather than fact. Now, I was intending to write a short essay about Rampa, but the more I found out about him, the more weird and wonderful his story became, and I ended up writing a full biography. I'm confident that this is the first full-length, objective biography of Rampa, and I think it was worth writing, not just because his story is quite remarkable, if not often quite ludicrous, but because he has had such a huge effect on the New Age movement of the 60s and 70s, especially in the UK, but worldwide. His books were translated into many different languages. This was because he didn't just confine himself to writing about Tibetan Buddhism. There are loads of these books. And in them, he says very little about any kind of Buddhism. In fact, most of his spiritual thinking came secondhand from Madame Blavatsky's Theosophy movement. But because there is no New Age concept that he wasn't happy to discuss and seemed to embrace quite happily. Everything from astral travel, astrology, the human aura, to start at the beginning of the alphabet, going through ideas of the hollow earth. He believed the moon was hollow as well. And at the other end of the alphabet, he believed he travelled on UFOs, and he believed in life on Venus. He also made predictions about the future, which patently failed to come true. What fascinates me most is that there are people out there who still buy his books and believe him to be this guru. Now, such a belief, such faith in that which is not only unprovable, but which can be shown to be false, fascinates me. There are 3 other essays in this book about 3 other systems of faith that I've personally come up against. One is about a new religious movement called the Brotherhood of the Cross and Star, who claimed that their leader, Alumbra Abu, was not just immortal, but Christ come again, and he was here to shepherd them through the Armageddon of the year 2000. He said the world would be physically destroyed in the year 2000. And I'm fascinated by the way that members of the church today explain away this fundamental mistake. Spoiler alert, we're still here. And their leader, unfortunately, Olumba, who was immortal, hasn't been seen for at least a couple of decades. I find this fascinating. The way that some of them even deny that there ever was a prophecy, even though there's a written record of it. I've also written about Scientology's Oxford Capacity Analysis Test. It's the test that they use, the so-called personality test, to try and snag new members. Now, a lot of people have written about Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard, but I analysed just one small aspect of their operations. And I would argue that there are a number of very small, almost innocuous lies involved, but that this is indicative of Scientology's willingness to deceive and manipulate not only the public, but their own followers. And finally, I've written about the band Psychic TV and the Temple of Psychic Youth, which was set up in the 1980s. It was a knowing attempt to create a cult. I have to admit, I still like and listen to the first two Psychic TV albums, but the person behind it all, Genesis P-Orridge, was a horribly manipulative person. When Porridge died a couple of years ago, Genesis was portrayed in some quarters as a kind of transgressive saint, which just wasn't the case. Genesis P-Orridge was a master manipulator, just as Olumba Rabu from the Brotherhood of the Cross and Star was, although neither were as successful as L. Ron Hubbard. Rampa was different, though. Being caught out in his imposture meant playing a role that he had to play for the rest of his life. He never once came out of character, as far as I can find out. And this led to diminishing returns. And although he does still have his followers, and I wish them well, I'm not sure how many of them know the whole story as I've uncovered it.